Okay, so I just want to show what I've done with a 4-segment numerical display. I'm just going through the numbers here as part of the introduction, and um, here I'll show all 9 digits, 0 through 9. And I thought I'd show a couple examples of clock faces. Here's something late at night, 11:59, and here's something in the morning, 8:34. I was inspired by the design I found online on YouTube, Lux Fundred's Scientific Institute. Um, Interestingly or ironically, I found it because I was going to use separate segments that were logically connected, the way um, LFSI did, and that's how I found his video. But actually, when I looked at his design, it inspired me to do one that didn't have separate segments. So all the segments in my design are connected, but it's highly inspired by what was done before. So thank you to LFSI for posting that video. Hope they comment on this and let me know what they think. I'm not going to read everything that's on the screen there. Here's my depiction of their design. I just redrew it so I could compare it directly to what I have. And this is their version V6A. And the numbers from 0 to 9, the digits on the left in the black square. So this is my version 1, where the main difference between this and the previous was that I shifted the top portion over to the left. I made the cross for the 4 over to be on the left, and I tried to remove some of the multiple parallel segments where there are sort of two segments that align with one another. You still see that I have one of those in the middle, in the sort of crossbar for the 8. I largely removed that, I believe, towards the end, but it's still there here. This, I don't consider this one very successful. The 4, for example, barely looks like a 4. The 2 is hard to read. 6 isn't great. There's a number of problems. It wasn't very legible, so I moved on. Here's version 1A. There were some improvements here, but I still found that the 2 was still odd looking. It might not even look like a 2 to somebody unless you were told that that's a 2. So I wanted to move on to a better design. And I was getting a little closer with version 1B. The thing I was working on with the 2 was to try to make the bottom curl on the tail less prominent, so it looked more like a flourish rather than a part of the number. So you could kind of believe that it was just a stylistic thing. Still wasn't quite there in this level. This version, and also I'm not real happy with the zigzag in the upper left segment, the straight part of the upper left segment, the part that's in the crossbar of the 8. I started to smooth out the shapes and to try to make them more reminiscent of the particular numbers, like the upper right segment, which is in the 7, and the 2 and the 3, trying to make it look more 7-like. And this helped a lot. And I was also reducing gaps, and also trying to make the curl on the 2 again look more like a flourish, so it looked didn't look so strange. And I made the upper segment of the 4 have a little more of a sharper angle to make it look more like a 4. So things were getting better. That's why I named this version 2. This is version 2A. I reduced the size of the zigzag, and I also made the upper portion, the sort of upper half of the number, smaller. This is really mostly to help make the 0 and 1 not so disproportionate. And I did some more tweaking on the corners, like with the 5, for example. And I worked on the closing up the 0 so that it looked less like a U or something. This is version 2B with some more tweaks. This is the final version I presented at the beginning. And I also show here the bonus symbols, which aren't particularly useful, but I'll show them here. There's sort of a 7 subscript, kind of a C. There's what might be thought of as a J without a dot, a lowercase j. There's a uppercase Q subscript and a lowercase g. They're not probably going to be wonderfully useful, but I thought I would lay them out. And that's pretty much it. I thought, by and large, I thought there was some improvement in the readability for a 4-segment display, but I certainly want to see what people have to say, and I appreciate what other folks have done, and had fun doing this. So yeah, I guess I'll say like and subscribe if you like. I think I only have like 10 subscribers at this point, so I'm obviously not really in this business, but feel free to do so. Have a nice day. Take care.